Okay, so hello. This is pointing. This is. Oh yes, this is something I want to show you off first. You'll notice some guys just said some words to me. They got a bit nasty with me, and they're coming after me. This happens sometimes to the time in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I didn't expect it to happen. I was trying to get back to a certain place to start the video of pointing, and this obviously happened. I recorded it just in case something like this did happen. But yeah, these are robbers. They try to rob you and take your money, and they usually have some lovely gifts inside of their pockets. So the question is, what is in their pockets is loot. So I'll kill them and I'll loot them, and I'll find some good stuff. So you can have a look what I'm talking about, what they get, what I get. See, what have I got? Silk. That's quite useful, I think. Yeah, I think you have to farm some of these at one point in the future. Anyway, right. So this is, like I said, pointing. This is where I go around collecting collectibles. So in this game, it's feathers, treasure chests. That's about it. Flags as well. There's a few flags, or a few feathers and lots of flags. Oh, and there we go. Sitting down with the sitters. Yeah. So I'm going to be doing that. This particular one, because obviously it's just Rome that you're in this game. It's just one big map. I've broken up a little bit just to sort of get started. So for this episode, I'm just doing viewpoints. Which obviously this is the whole episode of this is viewpoints, so that's all I'll be doing. And then next week I'll probably do some, what are they called? So start doing some collectibles. I also need to sort of set it up as well, because I need to destroy the Borgia towers, which I'll probably do this coming week, and then I'll probably just go from there. But yeah, for the starting of it, the pointing is just going to be doing the viewpoints, and then next week will be more collectible stuff. But yeah, that is what pointing is. If you want to check it out, then if you're going to watch this, then you are now an official pointer, which means you like collecting things and watching things like that and watching everything. Also, I'll do this as well so you can get used to the layout of the land, so you get used to some of the buildings and where places are and stuff. And another thing I do is read off database entries that we've collected. We have a lot at the moment. We have 43, which is an insane amount of stuff, and I'm now going to do them off now. So if you are watching and you're still here, then you are now a pointer. Welcome, pointers. So let's get on with this. So let's start. I'll just put them up on screen for a little bit, and then I'll obviously read them off while this plays. So, without further ado, let us begin with architects. Architects. In contrast to the hard geometric brutalism of Florentine architecture, Roman Renaissance architecture represented a true return to classic proportion, with buildings that sported classical columns, structural elements, and decorative forms, but also integrated new ideas from Florence, like the grand Palazzo blocks. Although many of the architects of Rome came from up north, they were inspired by the old ruins, creating an interplay with the ancient Roman structures throughout the city. Roman architects saw themselves as fulfilling all of human history, creating the essential expression of human will through the perfect cityscape. Out of this tradition of formalized expression came the great Renaissance architects Bramante and Michelangelo. Followers of Romulus. There isn't much about the followers of Romulus in the history books, but from what I've found, they were a pagan cult operating in several abandoned locations underneath Rome. The cult worshipped the mythological founder of the city of Rome, Romulus, who was supposedly raised by wolves. The followers believed that Romulus was part wolf and part man, which explains their retro wardrobe and bad table manners. Blacksmiths. Every Renaissance community needed a blacksmith. Swords, locks, pans, knives, nails, and armour were all made from metal, and all needed to be shaped. In addition, architectural ironwork flourished during the Renaissance as blacksmiths began to apply their practical craft towards making art. Doctors. Diagrams of the human body and the printing press influenced Renaissance medicine greatly, which had in turn been influenced by the Arabic medicine during the Middle Ages. By the 15th century, science had already begun its slow climb towards becoming more relevant than spirituality in the field of healthcare. However, many people stubbornly clung to old ways, visiting local mystics instead of doctors. After the plague ravaged Europe in 1350, many doctors dressed in special plague gear to treat patients. To prevent contamination, they wore a cape coated in wax and a primitive gas mask in the shape of a beak. Thieves, Renaissance thieves, were usually wanderers who could vanish all the first sight of trouble, making it hard for guards to track them. Black market business in Renaissance Italy was booming. Muggings in the major cities, which we've just seen a few seconds ago, were fairly common, as were murders. Often strollers were attacked in the dead of night. I've just realised I murdered them. Killed, robbed, and then rolled into the nearest river or canal. Even if a thief merely stole rather than killed, the penalties, if caught, were often unduly harsh. Torture was common, thieves were put in stocks and sometimes even publicly executed. In order to avoid punishment, thieves often created bonds of trust amongst each other. Each was supposed to tell the rest his dirty secrets, which meant that each thief potentially held his comrades' lives in his hands. I think some of these are the same as Assassin's Creed 2. Mercenaries. Mercenaries were highly mobile in Renaissance Italy, moving from contract to contract. Professional captains called contadinieri, usually paid for by cities, recruited men for a fixed amount of time. Many of the higher soldiers who served in Italy weren't even Italian, coming from places like Germany, Switzerland and Hungary. In the perpetual struggle to dominate Italy, the Italian states hired mercenaries to wage war against their Italian neighbours, and the soldiers, many of whom had no code of honour, would often rape and sack freely. When the state that was bankrolling them ran out of money, the soldiers would disband, frequently to be hired and to destroy the very city they had just fought to defend. Some mercenaries were honourable, fighting for a cause they believed in, but men such as these were few and far between. Where they existed, however, they were much sought after. Yeah, these are some of the same. Okay, Niccolo Machiavelli, date of birth 1469, profession philosopher, writer, politician. Unarmed prophets have always been destroyed, whereas armed prophets have succeeded. These cynical words were written by Niccolo Machiavelli, on one of the greatest minds of the Renaissance. Considered a pioneer of realist philosophy, he believed that all men are evil and will act upon their vicious nature if given the chance. The third son of a Florentine Anotoni, Machiavelli was tutored by his father in grammar, rhetoric and Latin. In 1494 he entertained government service as a clerk and an ambassador. Made a member of the Florentine Diplomatic Council, he was sent to the courts of France, Spain and Rome between 1499 and 1512. It was during this time that he met Cesare. Immediately taken with the young Captain General, Machiavelli wrote, "I can find no fault with him." Machiavelli followed Cesare, learning his approach to war until 1500, when he became de facto leader of the assassins. From 1500 to 1503 he settled in Rome, although little is known of his activities there. In 1503, Machiavelli was put in charge of the Florentine militia and the city's defence. He recruited citizens for his militia, preferring men who had a stake in Florence's continued success to dispassionate mercenaries who... His strategy seemed to work in 1509 when Florence defeated Pisa. Machiavelli continued to participate in Florentine government after the Medici family were chased out, but when the Medici returned, they arrested and tortured him. He was accused of conspiring against them. Unable to find any wrongdoing, the Medici exiled Machiavelli. He retired to his estate in Santa Andrea, where he wrote his famous works The Prince, The Discourses of Livy, and the Florentine Histories. Machiavelli died in 1527. His place of burial remains unknown. That is interesting. He used to walk around with Cesare before Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Fantastic. We know who he is now. Caterina Sforza, date of birth 1463, profession Countess of Forli, noble. A countess by marriage, Caterina was notoriously far before she ever arrived in Forli. Raised in the court of Milan, she received a classical education while tutored in the arts of war by her father, the Duke. At court, Caterina also acquired a passion for alchemy and hunting. In 1473, when she was 10 years old, Caterina became engaged to Girolamo Riario, the Pope's nephew. They consummated their marriage when she was 14. Once in Rome, she was heralded as one of the most outgoing nobles at court, while her husband had a reputation for being one of the most ruthless. When the premature death of the Pope's brother Girolamo gained even more power, securing the titles of Lord of Imola and Forli. When the Pope died, looters sacked Rome, destroying Caterina's residence. Unafraid, despite being 7 months pregnant, Caterina rode on horseback to the Castel Sant'Angelo and defended the Vatican with cannon fire and soldiers. In 1484, she moved with her family to Forli, paid off by someone with a grievance against her husband. The Orsi brothers killed Girolamo in 1488. As a result, Caterina became the ruler of Forli and Imola. She wasted no time winning the favour of nearby rulers, revisiting the tax system and training the militia herself. Although she advocated peace when those around her were hurt, she dealt fierce vengeance, frequently killing enemies, wives and children in punishment. In 1499, Cesare, in his quest for territory, decided to return Forli and to papal rule. Side note, the papacy claimed ownership of most regions in Italy. These lands were lent out to rulers, but papal troops would march in and reclaim them at any point, much like libraries set out to burn down the homes of those who kept books checked out for a long time. As Cesare marched towards Caterina, she sent the Pope a friendly letter that had been rubbed with the sores of plague victims. It went downhill from there. As an assault by papal forces became inevitable, Caterina snuck out of Forli with a small company of soldiers on Christmas Day 1499 and journeyed to Monteriggioni, seeking armed support from Ezio Auditore. History books might not be clear on that. Maria Auditore, date of birth 1432, profession writer noble. Tomorrow I will make torta bolognese. I leave to pick up the eggs and main for the market and will be back in time to open the bakery as the sun strikes the top of the courtyard. How privileged a life we lead. It is hard to remember on such a day that what is given may also be taken away. These are the final lines of Maria's diary. Born into the powerful banking family, the Mozzi, Maria is one of the most famous historical sources of the time period, due to her multi-volume diary, which has been translated by several noble scholars, and it is displayed in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Now, thanks to the Animus, we know why her diary ceased. After her husband Giovanni's arrest, during which Maria was mistreated by Florence's guard, she entered a semi-catatonic state. Cared for by Ezio's sister Claudia at the Villa Auditore, she remained silent for years until Ezio brought her a bundle of feathers, which we did, as he had collected during his travels, an activity that her youngest son Petruchio once engaged in. Brought back to life by Ezio's gifts, her temperament has been improving steadily since. Claudia Auditore, date of birth 1461, profession noble, the third child of Giovanni and Maria Auditore and the first girl in the family. Claudia lived in privileged childhood in Florence, high society, after the murder of Giovanni and her two brothers. All that changed. Claudia, Ezio and Maria fled to Monteriggioni and the safety of their uncle Mario's villa. Claudia remained in the villa, caring for her neatly comatose mother, while Ezio set off to avenge the murders. A record book recovered from an archaeologist reveals a relatively unexciting existence between months spent managing the villa's finances. Brief periods of activity were supplied by Ezio's visits and the renovations she was able to carry out with the money brought back from his travels. Under her care, the town blossomed, ushering in a new era of prosperity for Monteriggioni. Claudia, however, remained cut off from the world she loved. To hear of Ezio's adventures only reminds me of my own lack of Letho. This is not the life I dreamed of as a child. Ezio does not understand. He treats me so delicately. I despair of ever emerging from his prison. She writes in one particular poignant letter dated July 1495. Mario Auditore, date of birth 1434, profession contadinero noble. One of the several important contadineri patrolling the Tuscan countryside, Mario Auditore was a born leader. He began his military career as a 6-year-old, when he played a significant role in the Florentine and Milanese conflict at the Battle of Agonieri. While on an expedition to Montericci with his father, he alerted the Florentine general Micheletto Antendalo of the appearance of several dust clouds over the road, which signalled a surprise advance by Milanese troops. Thanks to Mario, the Milanese attack was foiled and the Florentine won the battle. Although Mario sided with Florence during Agonieri, for most of his career he defended the interests of his hometown Monteriggioni, derailing Florentine attempts to seize Tuscan territory. While Mario's younger brother Giovanni moved to Florence in 1454 to pursue a career in banking, Mario stayed at the family's villa in Monteriggioni, stating in a letter to Giovanni that he preferred fighting like a man to filling out balance sheets. After Giovanni's death, Mario brought Ezio, Claudia and Maria to the family villa and taught Ezio about the conflict between the assassins and Templars. Ever since, Ezio and his uncle have been inseparable, except when I was on a mission. Right. Ezio Auditore. Date of birth 1459, profession assassin. Well, this experience has been quite the education, although there's nothing in the history books following Ezio's disappearance from Florence as a teenager after the execution of his father and brothers. We now know that he fled with his mother Maria and sister Claudia to his uncle Mario's Tuscan villa. Trained there as an assassin, he prepared to hunt down the Templars, the men behind the execution, and hunt them he did, killing them one by one until he reached their leader Rodrigo Borgia. With the help of his uncle and the other assassins, he discovered Rodrigo's plans to open an ancient vault beneath the Vatican, supposedly leading to God himself. Ezio defeated Rodrigo, entered the vault alone, and communed with a projection of Minerva, a member of the ancient race that existed before humans. This all sounds very far-fetched when I wrote this out like that, now doesn't it? Fortunately, we have the Animus records to prove it, so we didn't dream it or anything, unless we're all in a dream right now. Maybe we are. Now it's time for locations, there's so many of them. I'll start with Tuscany. Villa Auditore. Constructed in 1290, the Villa Auditore is an important medieval predecessor to early Renaissance architecture. The villa's wonderful symmetry and ordered geometry were a revelation for its time. After a Florentine attack in 1320 left the facade damaged, Domenico Auditore, Ezio Auditore's great-grandfather, purchased the villa, although he publicly admitted to a renovation of the facade and the addition of a painting gallery. He orchestrated a complete restructuring of the interior in secret, designing his home to double as a fortress and training ground. Looking out both over the city that he protects and the Tuscan plains, Domenico was more than just an architect and a warrior. He was also a skilled engineer, recently discovered hidden compartments and rooms with mechanisms blocking entry and several unique features of the building that make it a technological marvel as well as an architectural one. Monteriggioni. Built in the 13th century by the overlords of Siena, Monteriggioni was actively involved in the defence of Tuscany against Florentine attempts to gain more territory. At the front of this conflict was the Auditore family, who became the city's rulers and protectors. It was the Auditore who constructed Monteriggioni's famous walls, which can still be seen today. Although standing in opposition to Florentine desires, the Auditore had cordial relations with the Medici family, largely due to the collective Florentine roots. Monteriggioni successfully withstood attacks from Florence until in 1554 the city was betrayed. Giovanni Zetti, the keeper of the garrison and the Florentine exile, was allowed to return to Florence in exchange for the keys to the city. Extraordinarily, the Auditore were allowed to continue the rule of Monteriggioni under Florentine leadership, showing that the Medici do not forget their friends. Porta Nomentana, one of the minor Mura Aureliani Aurelian Wall gates. Porta Nomentana was originally constructed as a simple arch entrance. The porta was flanked by two semicircular towers, one of which was covered to a tomb by a man by the name of Quintus Aterius. Quintus was said to have been a man made rotten by flattery, but history had the last laugh. The gate is now incorporated into the wall of the British Embassy. His dead ears will never hear flattery again. Aventino, from Rebecca, a set of the coordinates Shaun took from the Subject 16 coverage on this landmark. Maybe you should check it out. Another one of the 7 hills of Rome atop which the ancient city was built. Aventino was mainly a suburb during the monarchy and early republic in 456 BCE. A law was passed, allowing plebeians to own property on the hill, causing the city to quickly grow beyond the walls. This rapid expansion made it far more vulnerable to capture by the Gauls. Only after a bloody invasion, the Senate passed a motion to build a new wall encircling Aventino, a delayed reaction strikingly similar to the one found before the passage of healthcare reform in the US. Ponte Fabricio, in the oldest Roman bridge standing in its original form within the city limits spanning the Tiber River, is built in 62 BCE by Lucius Fabricius. Considering Lucius had his name engraved in 4 different places along the 62-metre bridge, it is thought he may have been a little coincided. Tempo di Saturno, a monument to the agricultural deity Saturn. His temple stands at the western edge of the Roman Forum. Also known as the Arterium, the Roman national treasure was kept here along with the Republic's reserves of gold and silver. Like the temple of Castor and Pollux, it at one time housed the official scales. From this, one might be able to summarise that Saturn was not only rich, but likely had an eating disorder. Tempio di Vespasiano. Standing at the western edge of the Roman Forum between the Temple of Concordia and the Temple of Saturn, the Tempio was built to honour the Flavian dynasty, comprised of emperors Vespasian, Titus and Domitian. As part of the deification process, construction was ordered by Titus shortly after his father Vespasian's death in 79. Legend tells us Vespasian's last words were, "Pity, I think I'm turning into a god," which, incidentally, will also be my last words. Oh, sure. Arco di Constantino. It's widely accepted that Emperor Constantine I had an insatiable thirst for gloating. So when he defeated Emperor Maxitinus and took the throne in 312, no one was surprised when he built this arch to commemorate his victory. Most of the artwork on the Ark was plundered from existing monuments and modified to alter its meaning. Some historians contend that the artists of the 4th century simply didn't have the talent to create such ornate pieces and only completed the Ark by recycling old masterworks from ruins around the city. A preposterous claim, as the Romans never copied anything. So what? See what I did there? Sarcasm. Oh, sorry. A preposterous claim, as the Romans never copied anything. See what I did there? Sarcasm. Santi Apostoli. The early Roman Catholic building was built by Pope Pelagius I to celebrate Narcissus' victory over the Ostrogoths. Like many other structures, it suffered severe damage from the Great Earthquake of 1348. It was restored in 1417 by Pope Martin V, and later again by Pope Clement XI. Col Grolanli. Situated northeast of the city centre, Grolanli is one of the 7 hills of Rome. Tombs from the 8th and 7th century BCE have been found here, confirming theories of its existence as a Sabine settlement before being assimilated by Rome. Constantine I had his lavish private baths built here as well. Although all that remained here are a few drawings. Colle Viminali. The smallest of the 7 hills of Rome, Viminali is shaped like a little finger pointing towards the central city. At the top stands the Palace of Viminali, which is the office of the Ministry of Interior. This little hill was also home to the Terme di Colenziano, which were renowned as the grandest of the public baths. Aqua Marcia. This impressive system was the longest of the 11 Roman aqueducts, running a staggering 91 miles. Built between 144 to 140 BCE, the aqueduct was named for its creator, Proprietor Quintus Marcius Rex. Wow. See a dinosaur. It was maintained and even expanded for the better part of 200 years, but typical of any 3 public service, by Nero's reign, so many people siphoned water out of it for personal use that the flow was barely a trickle by the time it arrived to the city. Aquedetto Claudia, from Rebecca. A set of those coordinates Shaun took from Subject 16's converges on this landmark. Maybe you should check it out. One of the ancient aqueducts that supplied the city at its peak, the Aquedetto Claudia was able to provide all 14 districts with water. They hugely relied upon source inexplicably went dry for 9 years, right around the time Nero was building his modest golden palace. His little pet project required vast amounts of water, but luckily the main build site was at the foot of Claudia's Castellium, or storage reservoir. When the palace was completed, the water conveniently came back. To this day, historians are baffled as to what caused the drought. My bet, dramatic tension. Nero's Golden Palace. Perhaps the best example of early Roman imperial mechanicism. Nero had the gaudy monstrosity built after the Great Fire of Rome. Thought to have been as big as 300 acres, I've just got shadow by the way. The gilded and bejeweled palace contained vineyards, pastures with flocks, groves, and a man-made lake to top it off. Nero commissioned a 35-metre tall bronze statue of himself to be placed just outside the main entrance, reassuring any doubters as to who exactly owned the building. The palace was known as a party villa, considering there were over 300 rooms, none of which were ever sleeping quarters. The list of ridiculous extravagancies goes on forever, one standout being a mechanism powered by slaves that rotated the domed ceiling of the grand dining hall as the heavens, while raining rose petals onto Nero's guests below. Esquiliano. The southernmost of the 7 hills of Rome, Esquiliano was another fashionable residence district. In a demonstration of humility, and graciousness, Nero confiscated property here to build his opulent golden house, which was, to put it mildly, excessive. Terme di Treviano. As with many of Trajan's projects, it is believed that massive leisure and bathhouse was designed by Apollodorus. The structure was built atop a section of Nero's ruined golden palace and was poetically intended to use by the commoners. In 537, the siege of the Goths destroyed most of the Roman aqueducts, and the Terme di Treviano were subsequently abandoned due to the loss of their water supply. Another public work project gone terribly wrong, but I'm sure throwing a few Christians to the lions in the Colosseo made up for it. I need a break. I need to take a drink. Oh. How are we doing for time-wise? How are we doing for time? Not too bad. See what I mean by saying there's loads of stuff to read? Oh, good God. How much we got left? Let's just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 left on locations. Sugar, where do we get to? We got to... Terma di Treviana, do we get to? I'll just have a quick check. Yes, it was. Right. Carrying on then. Colosseo from Rebecca. A set of the coordinates Shaun took from Subject 16 converges on this location. Maybe you should check it out. Constructed from 72 to 80 CE under Emperor Titus, the Colosseo held up to 50,000 spectators and is considered one of the greatest architectural achievements in Roman history. The majority of the shows, be they gladiatorial, dramatic or otherwise, were privately funded by the rich families to demonstrate their opulence, creating spectacles that were universally adored by the people of Rome. Unfortunately, a massive earthquake in 1349 caused large-scale irreparable damage to the Colosseo was left to ruin. In the mid-16th century, Pope Sixtus V wished to make use of the remaining shell and resolved to convert this structure into a great wool factory to provide employment for Rome's prostitutes. Sadly, the Pope died before his brilliant idea became a reality. Arco di Tito. Built by Emperor Domitian in 82 CE to honour his dead brother Titus, the Arco di Tito commemorates Titus's victory in the sack of Jerusalem. This arch became the inspiration for many arches to be erected thereafter, most notably the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, as well as Constantine's Arch. Arco di Semeteo Severo. Standing at the foot of the Campidoglio in the Roman Forum, the Arco di Settimio Severo is a triumphal arch commemorating the Parthian victories of Emperor Septimus Severus. After Septimus died, his sons Caracalla and Geta shared rule as joint emperors. However, in 212, Caracalla had Geta assassinated and subsequently destroyed all records of Geta's existence, including Geta's image and inscriptions on the arch. I guess a healthy sibling rivalry wasn't so healthy for Geta, but good for me and my sister. Palazzo Senatorio from Rebecca. A set of those coordinates Shaun took from Subject 16 converges on this landmark. Maybe you should check it out. Built during the 13th and 14th century as the senatorial seat for administration of justice in Rome, the Palazzo is the dominating structure of the Campidoglio. Tourists today would see an impressive double-lighted staircase in front, which was designed by Michelangelo. Not only intended to induce fear in the Climacothobic, these stairs were part of the commission Michelangelo received to redo several of the buildings on the Campidoglio, at the behest of Pope Paul III, for the sole purpose of impressing Charles V, then ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. Basically, the Renaissance political equivalent of a toddler doing headstands for his daddy. Palazzo de Conserverie. One of the structures that composed the Campidoglio, this palazzo served as the seat of the Roman magistrate responsible for administrating the city, or as the Pope liked to call them, his party planning committee. By the end of the 15th century, they had very little actual power. The Pope ran the city from the Vatican. In the mid-16th century, Michelangelo got his talented little hands on the building, redesigning the facade and adding a gigantic Corinthian palace strips on high pedestals to make it a little less ostentatious. I'm not certain he succeeded. Basilica di Santa Maria in Ara Coeli. Adjacent to the Campidoglio Square, the Basilica became the centre for religious and civic life in the city during the 14th century. The architect claimed climbing the daunting 124-step staircase leading to the main entrance as one knees would absolve a Catholic of all sins. Lord knows I'd rather have murdered on my knees than on my hands. Some historians postulate the basilica was built atop the ruins of Juno's temple. I have a feeling there's more to this building than meets the eye, so I'd suggest paying close attention to this one, because Juno... No, it was Minerva, sorry, not Juno. Oh, here we go. This is the mountain I can't pronounce. Il Campidoglio. The most famous of the 7 hills of Rome, Il Campadoglio's ancient history yields layers of ruins steeped in mythology. Several important Roman temples were built atop this hill, including the Temple of Juno, the Temple of Vitruvius, and the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Capitolinus. In 79, the hill was also home to the Tapularium, the emperor's main archive in the Middle Ages. It became the city's centre of civic government just before receiving a facelift from Michelangelo. The Pantheon from Rebecca, a set of those coordinates Shaun took from Subject 16, converges on this landmark. Maybe you should check it out. This architectural wonder still stands as the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome 2,000 years after being built. The opening of the dome's centre, known as an oculus, is the singular source of light for the immense chamber. Constructed in 126 CE by Marcus Agrippa as a temple to all ancient Roman gods, the Pantheon has still become a beacon of Christianity. The structure has been burned, rebuilt, robbed, modified, torn down, and renovated so many times the interior contains a myriad of conflicting icons and symbols. Apparently, most gods had this building constructed in their honour. I, however, recommend worshipping at the modern-day espresso bars surrounding it. Mausoleo di Augusto. If you were anyone of importance in Rome and died between 24 BCE and 98 CE, you were buried here. Occupied by the Colonna family in the Middle Ages, the mausoleo was fortified and converted into part of the Castello Sant'Angelo. Yes, they lived with dead people. After the humiliating defeat of the Commune of Rome in 1167, the Colonna family was disgraced, banished from the city, and their fortification was dismantled. Later, the family was allowed back into Rome and spent the duration of the Renaissance feuding with the rival Orsini family. And if this teaches us anything, it's that if you want to get rid of someone, hang them, because banishment is far too temporary. Santa Maria del Miracoli and Santa Maria del Montestant. From Rebecca, a set of those coordinates Shaun took from Subject 16 converges on this landmark. Maybe you should check it out. This modest church initially housed humble Carmelite monks who are probably in there right now, hiding from the outside world. Eventually it was converted into one of the twin churches that stand on the edge of the present-day Piazza del Popolo. The renovations took 13 years, starting in 1662. The resulting structures have become iconic landmarks in modern-day Rome. Piazza della Popolo. The future site of the famous Palazzo della Popolo is in the early 15th century. The piazza was merely the continuation of the Via Flaminia. As a result, it was most travellers' first view of Rome upon arrival. The powers that be eventually decided that rather the first impression of Rome by a little more impressive than a muddy expanse, so they set about building the beautiful square it is today. Piazza di Spagna. The future site of the famously popular Piazza di Spagna. This public expanse at the foot of the Spanish Steps is shaped as an elongated triangle rather than a square. Named after the Spanish embassy to the Holy See, the piazza became one of Rome's most popular meeting places. Notably, the Romantic poet John Keats spent his final hours in a flat overlooking the piazza. A thing of beauty is a joy forever, except when you're about to die of TB. Total biscuit. Trinata del Monte. Best known for presiding over the Spanish steps which led to the Piazza di Spagna. Construction of this church was completed in the early 1500s. Both the building and surrounding areas are property of the French state, who commissioned the project in celebration of their successful invasion of Naples, a very short-lived victory. Aqua Vergini. Named partially for the virgin waters that flowed through the channels and a myth that 30 Roman soldiers asking for water were led by a beautiful young girl to the source springs. How they knew she was a virgin is pretty self-evident. The Aqua Vergine is the most famous water source in Rome. Its springs provide the Trevi fountain, the Vita Borainense, the north and south fountains of the Piazza Navona and the fountains of Piazza del Popolo, and their water, none of which you will get to see because they were all built in the mid-16th century. Considered to be some of the best drinking water in the world, Romans and visitors line up to fill containers from the fountains, although after a 2007 construction accident they halted, the Virgins flowed temporarily, and the chemical cocktail distilled daily in the Trevi fountain to keep it clean. I'd stick to tea. So would I! Cup of tea. 3 more. Mura Auranelli. Enclosing all of the 7 hills of Rome, this line of city walls was built during the reigns of Emperor Aurelian and Emperor Probus from 271 to 275. It served as a deterrent against raiding clans of barbarians, who liked to strike poorly defended suburbs and villages in 545 during the Gothic War. Totila, king of the Ostrogoths, destroyed much of the walls in an attempt to reduce the Byzantines' ability to defend the city. And that's what's wrong with Goths today. Too much makeup and not enough village raising. Roma. Evidence suggested a human presence in the area of Rome for at least 10,000 years. The mythology of early Rome tells us that the city was founded by Romulus, who was raised in a cave with his brother Remus by a she-wolf. Apparently the 2 infant boys took their nourishment from her teat. A story like that must be true, right? Archaeological evidence supports that Rome did not, in fact, grow from pastoral settlements on Colli Palantino, the future site of the Roman Forum, upon which there were several caves. Evidently, the Republic of Rome was founded in 510 BCE. The successful and wealthy Republic gave birth to the Imperial Roman Empires 207 BCE, which were sprawling territories ruled by succeeding emperors. Oh, and we're nearly done for the day, so I'm going to have to stop here. I'll finish this one, so we'll keep going. When the emperor fell in 476 and the Roman Catholic Church took power in 756, Rome continued to be both an economic and cultural powerhouse in Europe. In the mid-14th century, Florence surpassed Rome as the epicenter of the Italian Renaissance. This irked the papacy to no end, so they set about spreading vast amounts of money and resources, commissioning architects and artists to create masterworks in an effort to bring the focus back to Rome. The result of this vanity-driven ambition was an unmatched creative and scientific output that is still marvelled over today. It is safe to say that Rome is historically one of the most important cities in Western history and arguably the world. And they've got one more, so we might as well just read the last one. Cappella Sistina. Inspired by the architect of Solomon's Temple, the Sistine Chapel is the most famous room in the Apostolical Palace, the Pope's Vatican residence. The chapel's famous ceiling frescoes were only begun in 1508, so no climbing across the finger of God. But the wall paintings, the line, the chapel, painted by Pietro Perugino, Sando Botticelli and Domenico Ghirlandaio, among others, are an ample consolation prize, as the Pope's personal chapel mass is frequently held inside, as are the papal conclaves, which occur after the Pope's death. The cardinals are locked inside the chapel and are not permitted to leave until the new Pope is elected. Only through smoke signals sent up the chimney to announce the new Pope can escape. The worst of all horrors, no cardinals, unless ill, can be attended inside by no more than one servant. That's just cruel. Right, is that it? Secret locations. No, we've had those. Good. I think that is it. That is done. Good. I will say goodbye now. I've recorded this video for 40 minutes. I usually only record at 20, so but it still works. Thank you, pointers. It was very fun and long, and my voice is going. I'm now going off to record next week's Assassin's Creed Brotherhood stuff. So, see you. Until the next time we meet. Goodbye.